Hello and welcome back to another episode of SportsZone. We are kicking it off right now with our soccer segment, Studio 90. I'm joined by Jessica, and we're gonna jump in with a little Premier League action. We're gonna start with probably the biggest matchup of this past weekend between a David and Goliath matchup, really, between Leicester City and Manchester City. Really, Leicester City, when you look at it, a year ago was on the very bottom of the Barclays Premier League table, and now they sit atop 4 points clear after defeating Manchester City 3-1. A lot of people are kind of questioning their title credentials, but Jessica, after this weekend, do you think that Leicester City really has to be considered a true favorite and not just a pretender?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they managed to beat the team that was second in the table, and now they're fourth, and Leicester City stayed on top. So I think that says a lot for how they played and what this means.
Yeah, Leicester City really this year has been performing admirably, in large part due to Riyad Mahrez and Jamie Vardy, their striking force up top. Those two have been phenomenal, with Mahrez scoring one of the 3 goals for Manchester City. Now Manchester City, who wasn't second, as you mentioned, drops into fourth, and that opens up Arsenal and Tottenham moved up the table. So do you think it's going to be just basically between those 4 teams? And if so, how do you think it shakes up down as we have the next couple weeks?
Yeah, I think it will definitely stay between those 4 teams. They've shown the most promise, especially like Manchester United tied this weekend with Chelsea. And I think that really kind of showed how Manchester United might not be playing the best, considering they tied with a team that's also not playing their best this season. So
yeah, definitely.
Sure.
When you look at it now, Manchester United with that tie against Chelsea has 41 points. Manchester City, after that loss against Leicester City, has got 47 points. So the gap between the top 4 and 5th place is really becoming larger. And this upcoming weekend, Valentine's Day, no less, is an enormous day in the Barclays Premier League, as Arsenal, who is now in 3rd place, host Leicester City on the same day that Tottenham plays Manchester City. So that's the 1st and 3rd teams in the league playing against the 2nd and 4th place teams in the league. That's going to be pivotal as we go, as not a lot of points are separating the top from 2nd and 3rd place. So do you see maybe Arsenal and Tottenham gaining some momentum and closing the gap on Leicester City, or do you see them kind of continuing on the top?
I think I see Leicester City continuing on the top, for sure.
It'll be interesting, especially since Arsenal, when they played Leicester City earlier in the season, defeated them 5-2, one of Leicester City's only 2 losses in the Premier League. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. We'll see how it is next week. That's all the time we have this time on Studio 90. Well, stick around for more Sports Zone.
Hello, welcome back to Sports Zone. This is our premier college basketball segment. I'm joined alongside with Deepak Bhagat. And big news now, there's a new number 1. Fighting Pride of Philadelphia. The Villanova Wildcats have taken over the number 1 spot in the Associated Press college basketball poll. Deepak, take us through kind of their big run through the Big East right now.
No, it's definitely been a very exciting day for all Villanova fans. First time ever in program history that they've managed to top number 1 in the rankings, especially jumping from 3 last week. And we're talking 2-3 weeks ago, they lost a pivotal game against Providence that ended their streak in the Big East with I think it was a 22-game win streak.
22, yeah. Which
was huge for them. And they didn't let that take them down. They kept working at it and striving at it. And like we mentioned previously, no one really wants to be number 1 this year in the NCAA, and there's been plenty of shakeups going on. I think for Nova, this is by far your one solid bet to keep that position. However, they are closely tailed by Maryland, and then Oklahoma did only drop to number 3. So we'll see where that takes them all. But I do plan on seeing Villanova carry it through and through up until the tournament.
Yeah, Villanova, we should expect to be probably one of the number 1 seeds going into tournament time.
Yeah.
However, as you mentioned, closely following them in number 2, kind of the home college basketball team here for us at American.
Unfortunately.
University of Maryland sitting at a 21-3 record, just moving up from 4 to 2. They've been playing some really good basketball.
Yeah. They've been playing excellent basketball. And Maryland has really been a program that has taken a big leap in the past few years. They have become a dominant force. They're a team that you can never rule out. And like you mentioned, they are kind of a hometown team here. I mean, they're just our neighbors right down the red line anyway. And so it's always interesting to see where that could end up landing them. But like I said, Maryland, they're number 2 right now, but I don't see them actually staying within the top 5 to finish out the season. I think Nova has the best chance to be in the top 5, carrying all the way through. That being said, Oklahoma is still there, Iowa's at 4, and Xavier made it to the top 5 for the first time in its program history as well.
I think it'll definitely be interesting to see who turns up to be where during tournament time. And, you may never know. Maybe Maryland plays American in the opening round if American keeps up this role that they're gone.
It's unlikely, but I think so. However, another big news that's been coming out recently, the self-imposed sanctions by Louisville. This was actually brought out yesterday all throughout the news, saying that Louisville would impose their, I believe it was a postseason sanction, which would effectively, really hold their program back. And we've seen programs, both in basketball and football, be held back. And so, Ryan, Louisville, a few years ago, top of the crop, cream of the crop. What does this mean for Rick Pitino's legacy, as well as for the university?
Well, you can tell Rick Pitino's not happy by it.
No.
He's very much trying to be kind of neutral about it, accept it, but deep down that with the basketball team that he has on the floor this year, he's not happy by any stretch of the imagination. Sitting with a 19-4 record, probably going to still move up the rankings just because they've been playing great basketball, and they really haven't had a final bound team since the Kevin Ware incident a couple of years back. So I think this is a huge problem for Pitino. I think it'll be interesting for recruiting purposes. I think it's going to be interesting for continuing basketball purposes. However, there's still other teams that are below them that are probably going to take their place. SMU could probably now jump up. They're still sitting at 20-2. Larry Brown, Southern Methodist University, which kind of had an early tournament exit last year.
Mm-hmm.
Providence, who's the lone Big East team to beat Villanova, is in the top 25, sitting at number 20. Kentucky still lingering around in the 22nd spot. Everybody thought they would still be a perennial national powerhouse. Kind of a down year for them. What do you think's going on down in Louisville?
I think that for Louisville, it definitely is going to be a huge shakeup for them. The program itself, I don't think will falter. I think with Rick Pitino still heading it up, they still have a solid program to play for. I also don't really see it affecting recruiting that much. I think that they'll be fine going that way. But I do see them, staying around middle of the rankings. I think a team that could re-enter the rankings soon enough will be Duke. As bad of a season as they are having this year, I think they're going to make it back into there. So we'll see where ultimately we find ourselves a few weeks down the road with the top 25 shaking up.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. That's all the time we have for this segment on Sports Zone. Alongside with Deepak Bhagat, I'm Ryan Siegel. More Sports Zone coming to you after this. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Zone. This is Ice Time. I'm Ryan Siegel, joined along with Michael. And there's some big news coming through in the NHL this week. And I guess kind of one of the premier defensemen in the league has found out that he is staying in Winnipeg. Dustin Byfuglien just signing a 5-year, $38 million deal. What is that going to do for the Winnipeg Jets franchise?
Well, it gives them a certain sense of security. Last year they made the playoffs, but they're kind of a bubble team. Underachieved a little bit when they actually made the tournament. But I think locking up Byfuglien gives them a lot of peace of mind, especially a team that's shed some star players like Evander Kane. It gives them a sense of stability and hopefully, allows them to develop sort of a nice, wily veteran core with him and Andrew Ladd going into the future.
I think him and Tobias Enstrom are still going to be considered one of the top D pairs in the league. And Winnipeg has had a strong year this year, so it'll definitely be interesting to see if they can maintain that for the next couple of years. Turning to other news, we're going to talk about Deepak's beloved Philadelphia Flyers for a second. Wayne Simmonds in this Sunday's game between the New York Rangers and the Philadelphia Flyers, kind of the next chapter of that, in which the Rangers won 3-2 in a shootout. Wayne Simmonds received a match penalty for sucker punching Captain Ryan McDonough pretty in the face, unexpectedly. After some displeasures, McDonough did cross-check Wayne Simmonds in the head, and there was some slashing back and forth. However, he was not suspended by the Department of Player Safety. Yeah. Michael, what do you think should have been the proper call there?
I don't know. It's kind of tough to say because in the game they ruled that he did intend to injure Ryan McDonough. So logic would kind of follow that if you intend to injure a player, you should get at least more than the 1-game suspension that you get after a match penalty. So because it was, a very blatant sort of, it really wasn't a borderline play. It wasn't him running into somebody. It was a fist thrown towards Ryan McDonough's face. So I think it's a little hard to justify not suspending him. I guess the only argument you could say is that, people throw, hands a lot in the NHL, and they don't always get called for it. Only when it's something as big as a hit as this was does it really become an issue. But, that's me.
Yeah. If you ask Elaine Vigneault thinks Wayne Simmonds should be suspended for a whole lot more. Vigneault saying that an all-star should not be punched in the face, even mentioning if this was Sidney Crosby, would this be a similar suspension? The match penalty is normally ensued by a 1-game suspension, but the NHL's Department of Player Safety rescinded that part of the suspension with the penalty. So, Michael, kind of take us through, since we are still moving along in February in ice hockey season. Michael, what are your big matchups for the week?
Well, tonight actually it's Rangers-Devils, two teams in this surprisingly competitive, at least sort of once you get past the Capitals Metropolitan Division. Devils were not a team expected to make a lot of noise this year, kind of like a lottery team, a lot of people thought. But, they've kind of been nipping at the heels of the Rangers and the Islanders all year, and it'll be, interesting to see Rangers who, have had their ups and downs, but are on a 2-game winning streak. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to the Devils. And, other than that, I believe later in this weekend we have Ducks and Blackhawks going to be huge. Typically the top 2 teams in the West.
Absolutely.
And just a joy to watch, really, no matter the outcome. A lot of fun, a rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals. I guess we'll see who comes out as top dog. My money's on the Blackhawks, as it usually is. It's really kind of a fool's errand to bet against them. But
Yeah. All right. My big matchups for the week, I've also got to stick with the Rangers and Devils tonight at Madison Square Garden at 7 p.m. I'm going to say the Penguins and the Ducks is a big matchup. The Ducks and Penguins have both kind of been underachieving this year.
Yeah.
But they're both still in playoff spots. So I definitely think it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Tomorrow night you have the Kings and the Bruins. That could always be interesting. Boston still nipping at heels for playoff position.
And of course, Milan Lucic's return to the TD Garden.
They'll be one of the. I think this is actually his first time in his return to the TD Garden, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how the fans of Boston respond to Milan Lucic. Wednesday, we have our Wednesday night rival between the Rangers and the Penguins. Another big showdown. Both teams are very close in the standings and jockeying for that second, third, and first wild card position. And then this weekend, we have the Capitals and the Stars, which is 2 of the highest scoring offenses in the league going toe-to-toe. Should be very exciting for all of us. However, that is all the time we have for this segment of Ice Time. Alongside with Michael, I'm Ryan. More Sports Zone coming to you after this.
This week in AU athletics, the men's and women's basketball team face off against Lehigh in a kind of a doubleheader on Saturday, where the women saw Lehigh come to Bender Arena and the men went all the way out to the Lehigh Valley. Both teams were unsuccessful in capturing the victory. The men trying to capture a 6-game winning streak, unprecedented in the Patriot League, and move up to 6th in the standings in order to try to capture a higher seed for the up-and-coming Patriot League tournament. The women, unfortunately, due to an injury by one of the key players,
Jordan Light,
was unsuccessful, but members of the team, such as Ari Booth and freshman center Cecily Carl, who scored a game high of 14 points, I believe that is correct.
It is.
And an unfortunate bout against Lehigh. The girls were really close in the fourth quarter, getting to close to as much as 3 points. But unfortunately, the Lehigh Mountain Hawks took the game away.
So the girls didn't look too good in this game. I'm going to be honest. They were shooting a lot of long-range twos. You never want to see that. It's a very inefficient shot. Wasn't too happy to see that, Nate. And I'll tell you, their defense couldn't lock it down at the end of the game. They were allowing a lot of penetration by Lehigh's guards, and that always leads to bad things.
Also, Ari Booth was 0 for 6 from beyond the arc. On to the boys' game. We shot at around 31% from the field, which is rather abysmal. And in comparison to Lehigh's 52%. The Marco Vasic struggled from the field, shooting 0 for 4, as well as Delonte Jones struggled a little bit, but still netting 12 points. The highest scorer of the game came off the bench by freshman Andrea Matic, scoring a game high for the Eagles of 14 points. What really got the Eagles going down was their third game in 7 days, correct?
Sure.
Yeah, third game in 7 days. And Lehigh's transition offense blew up the America 3-2 switch zone defense that they run under Coach Mike Brennan.
Yeah, and you know Coach Mike isn't going to be happy about that. He's not happy about a lot of things, and he always stresses defense and getting back on defense. You don't do that, he's going to be really unhappy. But the Eagles have been looking a lot better. They started off the Patriot League season pretty rough, but they got those 5 wins in a row. Tried to make it 6, couldn't do it, but they'll try to get back on track in their next game.
Yeah, next game is on Wednesday at 7 o'clock against the Boston University Terriers. Go Eagles.
Go Eagles. That game will be in Boston, and we hope that all of you viewers will be watching at home.
Either on the live stream, which is provided by Campus Insiders, or you can listen at any time on the Patriot League Network on radio. The girls' next game, I believe, is at home. Let me check it.
I'll be honest, folks. I have no idea when it is. But the girls, they've been having a kind of rough season, but they've been looking okay in their last couple of games. They're putting up good fights, even in the ones they're losing, which you always like to see.
Yeah, next women's game is at versus Boston here at Bender Arena at 7 p.m. Please come, free admission with your AUID.
So what else do we want to talk about, Nate?
Unfortunately, men's wrestling lost against Lehigh in the Lehigh Valley, and senior Will Terreno lost his first bout of the season, which was quite unfortunate. He's ranked 8th in the wrestling conference.
I don't know about wrestling.
Hello and welcome back to Sports Zone. This is our NFL segment, Going for Two. I'm joined by Michael and Jake. And guys, the Super Bowl has concluded. The NFL season has concluded. Last night, kind of a little bit of a letdown of a game. Still a great defensive-minded game, though, nonetheless, with the Denver Broncos taking it 24-10. And so, Mike, let's immediately throw it over to you. The winning team here, Denver, obviously a lot of storylines going around with this team throughout the season. What was your biggest takeaway, though?
From the game in general, just defense still wins championships. I mean, actually, I did some research. Coming in to last night, since Super Bowl V, number one defenses that made the Super Bowl went 10-2, and they now go 11-2.
Wow.
It's just really, really, really hard to beat a number one defense, it turns out. Even if you are Cam Newton and you are just a freak of nature athlete, just Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware played out of their minds. Their secondary was very, very good. And I think really that they took advantage of what a lot of people thought was Carolina's weakness all year, was their receiving core, which is really not that great with Kelvin Benjamin going out. But, they went 17-1. But I think, guys like Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, you can't fool around against those guys, and I think that's what last night showed.
Yeah, this team also overcame a lot of adversity throughout injury. And not to mention, even 2 years ago when they were in the Super Bowl, a lot of the star players on this team were injured for that Super Bowl. So we really saw how this affected them going into last night. But Jake, like Michael mentioned, defense wins Super Bowls, and they went up against the 17-1 this season Carolina Panthers, a team that in the past 2 games this playoffs blew out both their opponents, scoring over 40 points. What do you think was really the difference maker right there?
Well, I mean, like you said, you complimented DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller, but I don't think you can forget the other players on that front seven. I mean, you have Danny Trevathan, you have Malik Jackson, who recovered the fumble for the touchdown. You have Derek Wolfe, who just got a new contract, who's going to basically cement himself as the building block for that team's future. But yeah, the thing about this game is that what it showed is that John Elway's vision after the 2013 Super Bowl, when the team was completely embarrassed, his vision finally came true. Because after that year, he went right out and started solidifying that defense. Because remember, that was the year that they had the number one offense, but their defense was all right that year. You had players like Von Miller, you had Chris Harris, but they were both injured for the Super Bowl. But after that, he went right out there. He scooped up DeMarcus Ware the second the Cowboys released him, scooped up Aqib Talib, scooped up TJ Ward right off of the Browns. He went out and got Gary Kubiak, a coach he thought could help him win a Super Bowl. So, as much as I hate to admit it, I'm not a Broncos fan, but I have to admit John Elway's entire vision really came together.
Yeah, so they really did play really well together. And something that we noticed still coming out of Panthers was that, their team really did look lethargic. I think that a lot of it carries over from the fact that they played very cocky all throughout the season. They went in with that mentality. We're 17-1 now. There's really nothing else that could stop us based off what you've seen the performance of their past 2 games. However, they really held Cam Newton to really not much. Based off of what we've seen, he also yesterday was named the NFL MVP. And so that definitely was a huge shock to see him play not to the caliber that we've grown accustomed to. Now, a lot of people, Jake, have been saying that Cam really did not handle himself well post-game. Mm-hmm. What did you understand from that press conference that he had? And do you really think that does translate over to his maturity?
Well, I'll admit it, up until this year, I was a strong critic of Cam Newton. Not from his personality standpoint, not from all the things he did, but I was just more of a critic of his playing style, of the entire idea of these more mobile quarterbacks. But Cam Newton completely silenced any criticism I had of him prior to this year. He showed phenomenal accuracy. I think he showed himself as a leader of the team. So I really do not criticize him as much for the post-game conference as a lot of people can. I can understand the passion he had for going into that game. I mean, it's a Super Bowl, and he's a young player, so a lot of people want to rip into him, say he didn't show leadership, but it's hard to fault somebody for what they say 10 minutes after losing the biggest game of their entire lives. I mean, he could have handled it better. He could have answered more questions, but also, it's not really up to him to feed the media exactly what they want to hear. So, I don't criticize him for a lot of the things that people did. I think he had a phenomenal season, completely deserving of the MVP he won. I think he silenced any criticisms that people really should have about him.
And if we're being totally honest, he gave the media a lot more to write about than he would have if he answered all the questions.
That's actually very true as well. And so, Mike, switching over then to our winning quarterback, Peyton Manning, right here, winning his Super Bowl, his elusive second ring.
Yeah.
And I say that because, between the time that he won his first ring, he had 2 other appearances which did not go well at all, losing to the Saints, and then 2 years ago getting crushed by the Seattle Seahawks. What do we find now with Peyton? The fact that he said after the game against the Patriots that this might be his last rodeo. Does he follow the path of John Elway and go out on top, or is he still leaving that door open?
Well, I think he should follow the path of John Elway. I think anybody who watched him play this year knows he is far from the multi-MVP he once was. And just even from a health standpoint, you got to worry about his neck becoming a problem again. Mm-hmm. Whether or not he does, it's really hard to say. I'd love to speculate, but he's, aside from that little post-game sort of conversation with Bill Belichick, he hasn't said much about it. But I think he's unlike a lot of players in that he could pretty much buy the world with all the endorsements he has. He was not shy about showing that after the game. So, I think the smart move, and I think at the end of the day, what will happen, just because, he's got enough money and he's done it all, is I think he will end up retiring and walking away.
End up going, arguably either one or number 2 all time. I mean, they're matching him up against Tom Brady right now, who, in terms of touchdowns, Brady's not there yet, but in terms of elite, just success, I mean, Brady is at the top. But going to 2 guys who have more or less announced their retirement, Michael, we'll start with you going with Calvin Johnson of the Detroit Lions, someone who really no one expected this to happen. I mean, Detroit, iffy team. Yeah. Always an iffy team throughout their history. Calvin Johnson, though, what do you think this really does for that franchise and for the game?
Well, I think it's just the franchise back certainly a lot. I mean, last year they had a pretty good team, made the playoffs, and Calvin Johnson, he was injured a lot of the time, but part of what made them work was the threat of Calvin Johnson. That's why Golden Tate was able to have as good a year as he was. He found kind of a second life in Detroit. It's just another in the long list of just unfortunate things to happen to the Detroit Lions. I mean, a lot of people are comparing to Barry Sanders, one of the greatest running backs of all time, walked away, what a lot of people think was kind of early, because he played for the Lions. The Lions did not win. And I think we're seeing a similar thing happen with Calvin Johnson right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely that number 1 option that the team would love to have. And by that, virtue, he was a great guy to even have on the team, because when defenses decide to lock down your number 1 option, it leaves 2, 3, and 4 wide open. So he really did help that offense as much as he could. Injuries also plagued them this year too.
Oh, certainly.
But now heading over to another guy who was injured and who's been by far one of the best players in the NFL in recent years, Jake, Marshawn Lynch also, pretty much announcing his retirement. He hasn't outright said it yet. He said he's thought about it. His mom said something about a cryptic message. Where
He said it the Marshawn Lynch way of saying things.
Basically, one door closes, God opens another. Seattle fell, obviously, this year. Could not make to the third consecutive Super Bowl. What's the loss of beast mode going to do?
Honestly, I think compared to the Calvin Johnson, the impact of losing Calvin Johnson, I think that the Seahawks actually are in decent position even without Marshawn Lynch. Because you saw over the course of this year, after he got injured, first, you saw Thomas Rawls. You saw the way he emerged. And I'll admit it, I completely see why some people will be skeptical because, he only played for, 6, 7 games. And while he played lights out in those games, I can understand why people would be hesitant to go, okay, he's the guy after such a small sample size and being an undrafted free agent. You saw the same thing with C.J. Anderson last year. He had a very good stretch down the end of the year. And while he had still decent success this year, people last year were projecting him to be one of the top rushers. He was going top 10 in fantasy leagues. And, you can see how people are skeptical. It's very hard to evaluate a player on such a small sample size. But from what I saw from the way he ran, from the toughness he had, and the versatility and the large amount of things that he was doing, I do believe that Thomas Rawls has the ability to be a franchise back. And also, what you saw after Marshawn Lynch went down was you saw the development of Russell Wilson, who's always been a great quarterback, but after Lynch went down, he also started playing just entirely lights out, just pinpointing all of his receivers at some of the best passing totals of his of his career. So, while obviously losing a player of Marshawn Lynch's caliber can hurt, I think that in the long run, the Seahawks are going to be fine without him. They have all their other young talent locked down for the most part. So, I think the Seahawks still have a very bright future.
Definitely. I don't see any sort of thing drawing them back right there. But anyway, that is all the time that we do have for Going for Two and for the NFL season this season. Stay tuned for more Sports Zone coming at you next.
Hello and welcome to the final segment of Sports Zone, Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down, Deepak's favorite segment where we get to talk about the good, the bad, and the sometimes ugly in sports and in life in general. So we're going to kick it off. Thumbs up, congratulations. The Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl last night. In my opinion, one of the most boring Super Bowls in recent memory. Like, if we remove the Seattle Seahawks thrashing of the Broncos, this is probably one of the worst Super Bowls in recent memory, in my opinion. So we'll go thumbs down to Cam Newton throwing a hissy fit and pouting after the game. I thought that was a little embarrassing. If you want to be seen as like a franchise quarterback and a franchise guy, I think he should have taken a little accountability, should have taken more responsibility instead of just sitting there and pouting and they didn't play that good. I thought that was just embarrassing by Cam Newton, so thumbs down to that. Thumbs up because Arsenal in the Premier League remembered what it's like to score and put the ball in the back of the net. After not scoring for a streak of over 4 hours of agonizing gameplay that I watched all of, they put it in the back of the net. Mesut Ozil, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, they are back off the schneid in third place. Big match coming up against Leicester City this weekend on Valentine's Day. And we'll end it. A little somber news, thumbs down. I was a little upset this weekend. I saw the news of former BMX superstar Dave Mira's passing. That really upset me. The X Games were a big part of my childhood growing up. I can't pedal, I can't do anything, but just seeing those guys flipping on the bikes and doing all those sorts of things was pretty remarkable. And Dave Mira committing suicide, I think, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. I was just really saddened by that news. So thumbs down to that. He's one of the greats of this sport. I think he's got the second most X Games gold medals of all time. So thumbs down to that. And that's all from me this week.
Okay, well, first off, thumbs up for Peyton Manning going out on top, hopefully retiring at the end. When I was a kid, and I think pretty much anyone who's on this show or really is in college now, he was football. He was the premier player. No matter how many more rings Tom Brady has and all of that, he was football. He was the face of the league, and I'll always remember him for that. Love you, number 18. Thumbs down for Wayne Simmonds punching out Ryan McDonough and giving him a concussion, partly because Ryan McDonough's my guy and because Wayne Simmonds really should have been suspended. With that being said, thumbs up for karma winning out and the puck never lying and the Rangers ending up winning that game in a shootout. And my man, Matt Zuccarello, just embarrassing whoever was in goal for the Flyers. I don't even remember who they had. Was it Steve Mason? I can't remember because they are a complete non-factor to me. And of course, thumbs down for Marshawn Lynch retiring. Beast mode, one of the most entertaining players in the league. And yeah, I'm just really going to miss him sort of riling up all those crusty old sports writers. That's it for me.
Well, first, a huge thumbs up to the Boston Celtics defense. Over the last the Celtics on a winning streak of winning 9 of their last 10 games, and only in 2 of those games, one of them being a loss, has a team let up any more than 103 points, putting them firmly in the 3rd seed for the Eastern Conference right now, heading into the All-Star break and the trade deadline. Also, a big thumbs down to the Lions organization for managing to drain the life out of another perennial Pro Bowler, causing Calvin Johnson once again to, as like Barry Sanders, decide to retire.
All right, so we've got a couple thumbs here. Unfortunately, no politics for all you folks. I know that's going to make Vince Salandra very happy. But we're going to start right at the Super Bowl. Thumbs up to the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning. It was a big way to go out in style, beating the best team in the league to that point, the Carolina Panthers. Their defense played great. Peyton Manning did give a phenomenal performance for what he can now do with his injury. But definitely to that reaction was it was great to see that happen. Thumbs down to the halftime show. It was brutal. There was just too much going on. You couldn't even. I was at a Super Bowl party with people, and they were wondering if it was even real, because it just didn't look real. Yeah, it looks like they might have just filmed it in with some fake crowd people. Thumbs up to Eli Manning's reaction. I know that's been getting a lot of news on the internet recently. It was pretty priceless for anybody who ever got to see it. When Eli won his last Super Bowl, Peyton was going nuts. When Peyton wins this Super Bowl, Eli just looks absolutely stunned and perplexed. Thumbs down to Wayne Simmonds, because he did just sucker punch a all-star in the face, something that Wayne Simmonds has not been in a while. I think ever, actually. He's not an all-star in the National Hockey League. So I definitely think punching an all-star, and Elaine Vigneault's point, if this were Crosby, Simmons would probably be suspended for the next 5 or 6 games. Also, thumbs down to Marshawn Lynch and Calvin Johnson and all these guys kind of just retiring. It's going to be interesting to see who kind of takes their places, maybe Amari Cooper. We don't really know. Thumbs up to the Knicks for firing Derek Fisher. He's a horrible coach. I'm looking forward to see who they actually bring in. Maybe Phil will actually come down from the press box. I doubt it, but there's always hope. That's all my thumbs, and I'm going to throw it to our big producer, Deepak Bhagat.
Hello, it is I. All right, first and foremost, thumbs down. Vince, I'm sorry, I love you. Thumble is not my favorite segment. Getting to third is. Thumbs down also the fact that we had no baseball segment for the first time in years. It breaks my heart. Thumbs up to, as everyone else has mentioned, the Super Bowl. It's always the big game, though it wasn't necessarily the biggest, phenomenon last night. I don't know. It was a solid game. Good for Peyton. He went out on top. Thumbs up to Wayne Simmonds, because he's living up to the fact that the Flyers are the Broad Street Bullies. Even if we hit you for no good reason, that's just who we are. And we're from Philadelphia. Get used to it. Thumbs up to Ryan's reaction right now in my peripheral. It's just all I can see is him going something like this. It's pretty great. It's almost as great as Eli Manning's reaction when Peyton won the Super Bowl last night. Thumbs down to the fact that it took us forever to do all this. We are currently recording the show with an SD card and a single camera, and I'm going to take ownership for that. I think that's on me because I really should have planned better. I apologize to everyone who had to sit through for an hour dealing with all this crap. I will work on all this. I apologize again. Thumbs up to the guys who did show up and stay throughout the entire time. And so with that is all the thumbs I have. A big thanks to Ryan, to Vince, to Jake, to Michael, to Nate, to Brian, to Jessica, and to our lovely assistant, Cody Cohen, who unfortunately had to leave and that's why he's not on thumbs right now, and to David Stout for working the boom mic. So that is all the time we got for Sports Zone. Have a great week, and we will see you mañana, or next week, next semana.
There we go.
For other news, yeah, that's about it.
That's all we got. I don't know. Do we just like stop? I don't know what to do.
Should I?